The morning sun cast long shadows across the concrete parade ground at Fort Bradley Military Academy as recruits assembled for their first day of basic training. Among the sea of nervous faces stood Sarah Martinez, her slight frame barely filling out the oversized camouflage uniform that hung loosely on her shoulders. At barely 5'2" inches tall, with a baby face that made her look even younger than her 18 years, she stood out like a sparrow among hawks. The other cadets towered over her, their voices deep and confident as they exchanged introductions and war stories from their high school athletic achievements. Sarah kept her head down, adjusting her cap for the 100th time and trying to ignore the whispered conversations happening around her. "Did you see the kid they let in?" muttered Jake Harrison, a broad-shouldered recruit from Texas whose father had served in the Marines. "She looks like she should be in middle school, not military training." His comment drew snickers from the group of male cadets surrounding him. Marcus Thompson, a former high school football star from Detroit, shook his head in disbelief. "I heard they're lowering standards to meet diversity quotas. No way someone that small can handle real military training." Sarah's jaw tightened, but she remained silent. She had heard similar comments her entire life. Growing up in a rough neighborhood in East Los Angeles, she had learned early that her appearance could be deceiving. While other kids her age were playing video games or hanging out at the mall, Sarah had been helping her single mother work multiple jobs to keep their family afloat. The discipline and determination she had developed through years of hardship had shaped her into someone far stronger than her physical appearance suggested. The Academy's reputation preceded itself. Fort Bradley was known for producing some of the military's finest officers, and their training program was notoriously demanding. The obstacle course that would become central to Sarah's story was legendary among military circles, a brutal gauntlet that tested every aspect of physical and mental conditioning. Many seasoned soldiers struggled to complete it within the required time limits. Drill Sergeant Rodriguez emerged from the administrative building, his imposing figure commanding immediate attention from the assembled recruits. His weathered face bore the scars of 2 combat deployments, and his voice carried the authority of someone who had earned respect through blood, sweat, and sacrifice. "Listen up, recruits," Rodriguez barked, his voice echoing across the parade ground. "For the next 12 weeks, this academy will push you to your absolute limits. Some of you will excel, some of you will barely survive, and some of you," his eyes swept across the group, lingering momentarily on Sarah, "will discover that you don't belong here at all." The sergeant's gaze wasn't malicious, but it was assessing. In his 15 years of training recruits, Rodriguez had developed an eye for spotting those who would struggle. Physical appearance often provided the first clue, and Sarah's diminutive stature raised immediate red flags in his experienced mind. As the group moved toward the dormitory buildings for room assignments, Sarah found herself walking alone. The other female recruits had already formed their cliques, bonding over shared experiences from college sororities or high school sports teams. Sarah's background was different, grittier, more solitary. She had never been part of a team, never experienced the camaraderie that came with shared athletic achievement. Her roommate turned out to be Jennifer Walsh, a confident blonde from Connecticut whose father was a Navy admiral. Jennifer's side of the room was already perfectly organized, with family photos displaying images of sailing trips and graduation ceremonies from prestigious prep schools. Sarah's belongings fit into a single duffel bag, a stark contrast that wasn't lost on either young woman. "So where are you from?" Jennifer asked politely, though her tone suggested she was making conversation more out of obligation than genuine interest. "Los Angeles," Sarah replied simply, unpacking her few possessions. "Oh, which part?" "I have friends in Beverly Hills and Santa Monica, East LA," Sarah said, knowing that the clarification would likely end the conversation. Jennifer's smile faltered slightly. "Oh, that's different." The awkward silence that followed spoke volumes about the cultural divide between them. Jennifer had grown up with every advantage: private tutors, personal trainers, college prep courses, and family connections that opened doors before she even knocked. Sarah had fought for everything she had achieved, working part-time jobs while maintaining her grades and helping care for her younger siblings. That evening, as the recruits gathered in the mess hall for dinner, Sarah noticed how quickly social hierarchies were forming. The athletes gravitated toward each other, sharing stories of high school championships and college scholarships. The military brats bonded over shared experiences of growing up on different bases around the world. The college graduates discussed their degrees and career aspirations with the confidence of people accustomed to academic success. Sarah sat at the end of a half-empty table, methodically eating her meal while observing the dynamics around her. She had always been a watcher, someone who learned about people by studying their behavior rather than engaging in small talk. This skill had served her well growing up in a neighborhood where reading people correctly could be a matter of survival. "You're pretty quiet," observed David Chen, sliding into the seat across from her. David was one of the few recruits who seemed genuinely friendly rather than competitive or dismissive. He had grown up in San Francisco's Chinatown, the son of immigrants who had sacrificed everything to give their children better opportunities. "Just listening," Sarah replied, appreciating that someone had made an effort to include her. "Smart strategy. My dad always said you learn more with your ears than your mouth." David's comment sparked the first real conversation Sarah had experienced since arriving at the academy. They discovered shared experiences of growing up in immigrant communities, working from a young age, and feeling the weight of family expectations to succeed. Unlike the other recruits who seemed driven by personal ambition or family tradition, both Sarah and David carried the hopes of entire extended families, who saw military service as a path to stability and respect. The conversation was interrupted by loud laughter from Jake Harrison's table. "Did you guys hear about the obstacle course record?" Jake was saying, his voice carrying across the mess hall. "Tommy Morrison set it back in 1998, 4 minutes and 37 seconds. That record has stood for over 20 years. I heard Rodriguez uses it to weed out the weak ones," added Marcus Thompson. "Anyone who can't complete the course in under 8 minutes gets extra training until they can. Some people never make it." Sarah's ears perked up at this information. Physical challenges had never intimidated her. Growing up, she had climbed fire escapes to retrieve balls that had been thrown onto rooftops, raced through narrow alleyways playing elaborate games of tag, and developed remarkable balance and agility navigating the urban jungle of her neighborhood. "What's the course like?" she found herself asking David. "Brutal, from what I hear. Rope climbing, wall scaling, tire runs, crawling under barbed wire, balance beams, weighted carries. It tests everything: strength, endurance, agility, mental toughness." Sarah nodded thoughtfully. While she might not have the raw power of some of her male counterparts, she had spent years developing functional strength through real-world activities, carrying groceries up 3 flights of stairs when the elevator was broken, helping her mother move furniture when they changed apartments, climbing construction scaffolding to retrieve her little brother's toy airplane. That night, as Jennifer typed on her laptop, likely updating social media or video chatting with friends from home, Sarah lay in her narrow bunk staring at the ceiling. She thought about the whispered comments, the skeptical glances, the unspoken assumption that she didn't belong among these future military officers. The doubt wasn't entirely unfair. Sarah knew she looked young and fragile. She had always been small for her age, often mistaken for someone several years younger. Store clerks regularly asked for her ID when she tried to purchase R-rated movie tickets. Even her own family sometimes treated her like the baby of the group, despite her being more responsible and mature than siblings years older. But appearances could be deceiving, and Sarah had learned to use underestimation as an advantage. When people expected little from her, she could surprise them. When they overlooked her capabilities, she could exceed their expectations. When they dismissed her as weak or incapable, she could prove them wrong in spectacular fashion. The challenge would be finding an opportunity to demonstrate her true capabilities. Military training was designed to be methodical and progressive, building skills gradually over time. There weren't many chances for dramatic individual moments that could shift perceptions overnight, except for the obstacle course. As Sarah finally drifted off to sleep, her mind was already working through the possibilities. If she could somehow master that course, not just complete it, but excel at it, she might be able to change how everyone saw her. The thought was both thrilling and terrifying. The next morning brought their first real taste of military discipline. Reveal sounded at 0500 hours, jarring the recruits from sleep with its harsh electronic tone. Sarah was already awake, having developed the habit of early rising during her years of helping with her family's morning routines. While Jennifer and other recruits stumbled around in confusion, Sarah quickly dressed and made her bunk with hospital corners that would have impressed any drill sergeant. Her efficiency drew surprised looks from her roommate and neighboring recruits who were still trying to figure out which uniform pieces went where. The morning physical training session revealed more about the group dynamics. As they ran laps around the academy's track, natural leaders emerged while others struggled to keep pace. Sarah maintained a steady rhythm, neither falling behind nor pushing to the front. She had learned the importance of pacing herself, understanding that endurance often mattered more than speed. Jake Harrison sprinted ahead of the group, his competitive nature driving him to establish dominance early. Marcus Thompson kept pace beside him, the two athletes treating the run as an informal race. Other recruits clustered in groups based on their fitness levels and running experience. Sarah found herself running alongside David Chen and a few other recruits who took a more measured approach. She noticed things about her fellow trainees that others might miss. Who was breathing heavily too early? Who favored one leg slightly? Who was pushing beyond their sustainable pace? After the run came calisthenics, push-ups, sit-ups, jumping jacks, and other basic exercises designed to assess baseline fitness levels. This was where Sarah's unconventional background began to show advantages. While other recruits had developed strength through weight training and organized sports, Sarah's strength was functional and practical. Her push-ups were smooth and controlled, her form perfect from years of building upper body strength through climbing and carrying. Her sit-ups demonstrated core strength developed through real-world activities rather than gym workouts. Most importantly, she showed no signs of fatigue or struggle despite her small stature. Drill Sergeant Rodriguez noticed. His trained eye picked up on the discrepancy between Sarah's appearance and her performance. While he didn't comment directly, Sarah caught him making notes on his clipboard during her exercises. The morning concluded with their first classroom session on military history and protocol. As recruits filed into the lecture hall, Sarah overheard fragments of conversation that revealed how others were processing the morning's activities. The little one kept up pretty well, Marcus admitted grudgingly to Jake. Probably just adrenaline, Jake dismissed. Wait until we get into real training. She'll wash out within a month. Their instructor, Captain Williams, was a decorated officer who had served in multiple combat zones. Her opening lecture focused on the Academy's history and the standards expected of graduates. She spoke about previous classes, highlighting both spectacular successes and notable failures. Every year, we get recruits who look like they were born to be soldiers, Captain Williams said, clicking through slides showing previous graduating classes. Athletic scholarships, perfect test scores, impressive family military histories, and every year some of those seemingly perfect candidates wash out, while others who nobody expected to succeed graduate at the top of their class. Her words hung in the air as recruits glanced around the room, wondering which category they fell into. The military doesn't care about your high school football statistics or your college GPA, Williams continued. It cares about character, determination, and the ability to perform under pressure. Those qualities aren't always visible on a recruitment application. Sarah felt a spark of hope at these words. If the Academy truly valued character and determination over physical appearance, she might have more of a chance than people assumed. The afternoon brought their first glimpse of the infamous obstacle course. Drill Sergeant Rodriguez led the group to a sprawling complex of wooden barriers, rope nets, balance beams, tire fields, and other challenging elements. The course stretched across nearly 2 acres, with each obstacle designed to test different physical and mental capabilities. This is where we separate the warriors from the wannabes, Rodriguez announced, his voice carrying a mixture of pride and challenge. The current record holder completed this course in 4 minutes and 37 seconds. Most of you will be lucky to finish under 10 minutes on your first attempt. Sarah studied the course intently, her mind automatically plotting the most efficient routes through each section. Growing up in an urban environment had taught her to see pathways and possibilities that others might miss. Where others saw intimidating obstacles, she saw puzzles to be solved. The rope climb looked manageable. She had scaled plenty of fences and fire escapes. The wall traverse would require technique more than brute strength, something she had learned navigating between building rooftops. The tire run demanded quick feet and good balance, skills she had developed playing elaborate games in construction sites and abandoned lots. But she also recognized the course's serious challenges. The weighted carry section would test her limited upper body strength. The low crawl under barbed wire would be physically demanding and mentally challenging. The final sprint up a steep incline would require reserves of energy she might not have after completing the earlier obstacles. We'll begin basic obstacle training next week, Rodriguez continued. But I want each of you to walk through the course today. Study it. Think about it. Understand what you're going to face. As the group dispersed to examine different sections of the course, Sarah found herself drawn to areas where technique might overcome raw power. She watched a few upperclassmen who were using the course for their regular training, noting their approaches and identifying potential improvements. Intimidating, isn't it? David Chen appeared beside her as she studied the rope climbing section. Actually, it looks kind of fun, Sarah replied honestly. David laughed. You have a strange definition of fun. But Sarah was serious. The course represented a pure test of capability. No politics, no social dynamics, no advantages based on family connections or educational background. Just her versus the obstacles, with time as the ultimate judge of success or failure. That evening, as she lay in her bunk reviewing the day's experiences, Sarah made a decision that would change everything. She wasn't just going to complete the obstacle course, she was going to master it. And maybe, just maybe, she would show everyone that appearances could be very deceiving indeed. The stage was set for what would become one of the most remarkable stories in Fort Bradley's long and distinguished history. A young woman who looked like she belonged in high school was about to prove that heart, determination, and unconventional preparation could overcome any obstacle, literal or metaphorical. The second week at Fort Bradley brought the recruits face-to-face with their first real military challenges. Morning formations became more precise, classroom instruction more demanding, and physical training significantly more intense. For Sarah Martinez, each day presented new opportunities to prove herself while navigating the increasingly obvious skepticism of her peers and instructors. The obstacle course training began on a gray Monday morning that perfectly matched the mood of most recruits. Drill Sergeant Rodriguez had divided the group into teams of 4, mixing abilities and backgrounds to create what he called realistic military unit dynamics. Sarah found herself grouped with Jennifer Walsh, Marcus Thompson, and Tommy Wynn, a quiet recruit from Seattle whose parents had fled Vietnam decades earlier. The team assignments were clearly intentional. Rodriguez had paired the smallest recruit with some of the most physically imposing, creating a dynamic that would either build mutual respect or expose fundamental weaknesses in both individual character and group cohesion. "All right, listen up," Rodriguez barked as the teams assembled at the course's starting line. "Today we begin with individual obstacle training. Each of you will attempt every element of the course separately before we move to full runs. I want to see your strengths, identify your weaknesses, and understand what we're working with." The first obstacle was a 12-foot wooden wall with a climbing rope. Most recruits approached it with brute force, using upper body strength to haul themselves up the rope and over the barrier. Jake Harrison attacked it like a football drill, powering up with impressive speed but inefficient technique. When Sarah's turn came, she approached the wall differently. Instead of relying purely on arm strength, she used her legs to walk up the wall while pulling with her arms, distributing the effort more efficiently. Her lighter weight became an advantage, allowing her to move with a fluid grace that surprised everyone watching. "Interesting technique," Rodriguez noted, making marks on his clipboard. "Where did you learn to climb like that?" "Fire escapes," Sarah replied simply. "Growing up in East LA, sometimes the elevator was broken and we lived on the 4th floor." Her matter-of-fact response drew different reactions from her teammates. Jennifer looked slightly horrified at the implication of Sarah's childhood living conditions. Marcus seemed genuinely intrigued by the practical application of urban survival skills. Tommy nodded with understanding. He too came from a family that had faced economic hardships. The rope traverse presented another opportunity for Sarah to demonstrate unconventional advantages. While other recruits struggled with the hand-over-hand technique across a 30-foot gap, Sarah's experience navigating between buildings served her well. She had spent countless hours as a child and teenager crossing between fire escapes, balancing on narrow ledges and finding creative pathways through urban obstacles. Her approach was methodical and efficient. Where others rushed and tired themselves out, Sarah maintained steady progress with perfect form. Her small hands actually gripped the rope more securely than larger recruits who struggled with hand positioning. "Look at that," murmured David Chen to another recruit. "She makes it look easy." But not everyone was impressed. Jake Harrison, who had struggled with the rope traverse despite his obvious athletic ability, made no effort to hide his frustration. "Must be nice to weigh 90 pounds, he muttered loud enough for several people to hear. The comments stung. But Sarah had learned long ago not to respond to such provocations. Instead, she focused on the next obstacle, a series of balance beams of varying heights and widths. This element proved to be another natural fit for her abilities. Growing up in an environment where she often had to navigate narrow ledges, broken sidewalks, and improvised pathways, had given Sarah exceptional balance and spatial awareness. While other recruits wobbled and fought for stability, she moved across the beams with the confidence of someone who had spent years walking on much more challenging surfaces. The tire run, however, presented her first real struggle. The obstacle consisted of dozens of heavy tires laid out in a complex pattern that required quick feet, strong legs, and good endurance. Sarah's smaller stride length meant she had to take more steps than her longer-legged teammates, and the accumulated fatigue began to show. "Come on, Martinez," Rodriguez called out as she worked through the tire field. "Don't let the obstacles control you. You control them." His encouragement was the first positive feedback she had received from any instructor. She adjusted her technique, using shorter, quicker steps and focusing on rhythm rather than speed. By the end of the obstacle, she had found her pace and was moving more efficiently. The low crawl under barbed wire was perhaps the most mentally challenging obstacle for all recruits. Lying flat on their stomachs, they had to pull themselves across 50 yards of muddy ground, while staying low enough to avoid the sharp wire stretched above them. This obstacle neutralized many physical advantages. Size and strength mattered less than determination and technique. Sarah's smaller profile actually helped her stay lower to the ground, and her experience with confined spaces, gained from crawling through construction sites and abandoned buildings during childhood games, served her well. As she emerged from the crawl, covered in mud but moving steadily, Sarah noticed that some of the other recruits were beginning to look at her differently. The dismissive glances were being replaced by cautious respect. She was proving that different didn't necessarily mean inferior. The weighted carry stations tested everyone's limits. Recruits had to transport 40-pound sandbags across various distances and terrains. For Sarah, this represented 40% of her body weight, a significant challenge that would require technique and determination to overcome. She approached the task systematically, studying how the weight affected her balance and experimenting with different carrying positions. Her background helping her mother with heavy grocery bags and household items had taught her efficient ways to manage awkward loads. "Use your core," Tommy Nguyen offered quietly as they prepared for their second round of carries. "My dad taught me that when we worked in his restaurant kitchen." The advice was helpful, and Sarah appreciated that someone was offering assistance rather than criticism. She adjusted her technique, engaging her abdominal muscles to support the weight and maintaining better posture throughout the carry. The morning's training concluded with a group discussion led by Rodriguez. He had observed every recruit's performance carefully and wanted to address what he had seen. "I noticed some interesting things today," he began, his stern expression revealing nothing about whether his observations were positive or negative. "Some of you approached these obstacles exactly how I expected, with brute force and conventional techniques. Others surprised me with creative solutions and unconventional approaches." His gaze moved across the assembled recruits, stopping briefly on Sarah before continuing. "In real military operations, you don't get to choose your obstacles. The enemy doesn't design challenges based on your strengths. Success often depends on adapting quickly and finding solutions that others might miss." The afternoon brought classroom instruction on military tactics and strategy. Captain Williams discussed historical battles where unconventional approaches had led to victory against superior forces. She talked about David versus Goliath scenarios where smaller, more agile forces had defeated larger, more powerful opponents through superior strategy and execution. "The military values many qualities," Williams explained, "but adaptability and creative problem-solving often matter more than raw physical capability. The soldier who can find a new solution to an old problem is worth their weight in gold." Sarah found herself paying close attention to these lessons. The examples Williams cited seemed to validate her own approach to the obstacle course challenges. Maybe her unconventional background and different perspective could be advantages rather than limitations. That evening in the dormitory, conversations among recruits began to shift. The initial focus on comparing high school athletic achievements and family military connections was giving way to discussions about the day's training experiences. "Did you see how Martinez handled the rope traverse?" David Chen was saying to a small group gathered in the common area. "I've never seen anyone move across that thing so smoothly." "She's definitely got some skills," admitted Marcus Thompson, though his tone remained somewhat grudging. "I just wonder how she'll handle the really demanding stuff." Jennifer Walsh, Sarah's roommate, had been unusually quiet since returning from training. As they prepared for bed, she finally spoke up. "Where exactly did you learn to do all that climbing and balancing stuff?" Jennifer asked, her voice mixing curiosity with something that might have been admiration. Sarah looked up from organizing her gear. "Just growing up in the neighborhood. You learn to get around however you can." "It's actually pretty impressive," Jennifer admitted. "I mean, I never had to develop those kinds of skills. Everything was always just provided for me." The conversation revealed a growing awareness among recruits that their different backgrounds had shaped them in unique ways. The assumption that privilege and preparation necessarily translated into superior military potential was beginning to crumble. The second day of obstacle training brought new challenges and new opportunities for Sarah to demonstrate her capabilities. Rodriguez had announced that they would begin timing individual runs through portions of the course, creating the first competitive element in their training. "Time is everything in military operations," he explained. "The difference between success and failure, between life and death, often comes down to seconds. I want to see who can perform under pressure and who falls apart when the clock is running." The timing trials created a different dynamic among the recruits. Previous training had been collaborative, with teammates helping and encouraging each other. Now they were competing directly, and personalities began to emerge more clearly. Jake Harrison approached each timed run like a personal challenge, attacking obstacles with aggressive intensity. His football background had taught him to view every situation as a contest to be won. Marcus Thompson showed similar competitive drive, though with more controlled technique, developed through years of track and field training. The female recruits displayed varying levels of competitiveness. Some seemed intimidated by the direct competition, while others embraced the challenge. Jennifer Walsh struggled with obstacles that required upper body strength, but showed determination to improve with each attempt. When Sarah's turn came for her first timed run, she felt a familiar calm settle over her. Competition had always been a mental game for her, not about defeating others, but about pushing herself to perform at her highest level. The course segment included the wall climb, rope traverse, balance beam, and tire run, a combination that would test multiple skills. As the stopwatch started, Sarah moved with purposeful efficiency rather than frantic speed. Her wall climb was smooth and controlled. The rope traverse flowed with practiced technique. She navigated the balance beam with confidence, and her tire run showed the improved rhythm she had developed during the previous day's training. When Rodriguez called out her time, 6 minutes and 42 seconds for the segment, several recruits looked surprised. She had completed the section faster than most of the male recruits, despite their obvious size and strength advantages. "Not bad, Martinez," Rodriguez said, making notes on his clipboard. "But you can do better. I saw hesitation on the tire run, and your transition time between obstacles needs work." The feedback was constructive rather than dismissive, acknowledging her performance while identifying areas for improvement. It was the first time any instructor had spoken to her as a capable soldier rather than a questionable recruit. The positive moment was somewhat dampened by reactions from other recruits. While some, like David Chen and Tommy Nguyen, offered congratulations, others seemed resentful of her success. "Lucky run," Jake muttered to Marcus. "Let's see her do it when she's actually tired." But Sarah was learning to distinguish between constructive criticism and simple negativity. Rodriguez's feedback was helpful because it was specific and actionable. Jake's comment was just an attempt to diminish her achievement. The week continued with increasingly challenging training. Recruits faced longer runs, more complex obstacle combinations, and additional academic requirements. The physical demands began to separate those who were truly committed from those who had joined the academy for reasons other than genuine military aspiration. Several recruits were already showing signs of struggle. The combination of physical challenges, academic pressure, and social dynamics was proving overwhelming for some individuals who had never faced such comprehensive testing. Sarah found herself settling into a routine that played to her strengths while addressing her weaknesses. She spent extra time in the gym working on upper body strength, knowing that her limitations in that area could become problematic as training intensified. She studied military history and tactics with the same intensity she had once applied to her high school coursework, when good grades represented her only path to a better future. Most importantly, she began to develop a support network among recruits who appreciated her unique skills and perspective. David Chen became a genuine friend, someone who understood the immigrant experience and the pressure to succeed for family rather than just personal ambition. Tommy Wen proved to be an excellent training partner, quiet but determined and always willing to share techniques he had learned. Even Jennifer Walsh began to warm up to her roommate as she recognized Sarah's dedication and work ethic. The cultural gap between them remained significant, but mutual respect was growing. The week concluded with their first full obstacle course run. Not timed, but a complete passage through every element from start to finish. Rodriguez wanted to assess each recruit's overall readiness for the more intensive training that would follow. Sarah approached the complete course with strategic thinking that reflected her analytical nature. She had studied each obstacle individually, understanding its demands and her optimal technique. Now she needed to put everything together while managing her energy and maintaining focus throughout the extended challenge. The run began with the wall climb, which she completed efficiently. The rope traverse followed, and her improved upper body strength showed in slightly faster time and better endurance. The balance beam section played to her natural abilities, allowing her to bank some time for more challenging obstacles ahead. The tire run tested her improved conditioning and rhythm. The weighted carry pushed her physical limits, but remained manageable with proper technique. The low crawl under barbed wire required mental toughness as much as physical capability, and her experience with confined spaces helped her maintain composure when other recruits began to panic. The final elements included a series of barriers to climb over and under, followed by a sprint to the finish line. By this point, fatigue was affecting everyone's performance, and the mental challenge became as significant as the physical demands. Sarah's smaller size meant she had worked harder relative to her body weight throughout the course, but it also meant she had less mass to carry during the final sprint. As other recruits struggled with heavy legs and labored breathing, she maintained steady pace and form. When she crossed the finish line, Sarah felt a quiet satisfaction rather than dramatic triumph. She had completed every obstacle without assistance, maintained good technique throughout, and finished with enough energy for a strong final sprint. Rodriguez's reaction was more telling than any time announcement. He nodded approvingly as she finished, making extensive notes on his clipboard and speaking briefly with Captain Williams, who had been observing the runs. "Solid effort, Martinez," Rodriguez said as she caught her breath. "You're starting to show real potential." The comment was overheard by several other recruits, marking a subtle but significant shift in how Sarah was perceived within the group. She was no longer just the small recruit who looked out of place. She was becoming recognized as someone who belonged at the academy and might have what it took to succeed. But recognition brought new challenges. As Sarah's capabilities became more apparent, some recruits began to view her success with resentment rather than respect. The assumption that she didn't belong was being replaced by concern that she might actually excel, a possibility that threatened some individuals' sense of their own importance. The stage was being set for conflicts that would test not just Sarah's physical abilities, but her mental toughness and character. As training intensified and competition increased, she would need every skill she had developed during her challenging childhood to navigate the complex social and psychological pressures of military academy life. Her journey from underestimated outsider to recognized capability was just beginning, and the real tests lay ahead. The third week at Fort Bradley Military Academy marked a turning point in Sarah Martinez's journey from overlooked recruit to emerging standout. The initial phase of basic obstacle training had concluded, and instructors were beginning to identify recruits who showed exceptional potential for advanced military roles. Sarah's name was starting to appear on lists that mattered. Captain Williams called Sarah to her office on a crisp Thursday morning. The meeting came as a surprise. Individual consultations with instructors were typically reserved for recruits who were either excelling dramatically or struggling significantly. Sarah hoped she fell into the former category. Williams' office reflected her distinguished military career. Combat ribbons, commendation certificates, and photographs from various deployments covered the walls. A large map marked with colored pins showed locations where graduates from Fort Bradley had served with distinction. "Sit down, Martinez," Williams said, gesturing to a chair across from her desk. "I wanted to discuss your progress and some opportunities that might be available to you." Sarah tried to keep her expression neutral while her mind raced through possibilities. Had she done something wrong? Was this about her unconventional background? Or could it actually be positive news? "Drill Sergeant Rodriguez and I have been reviewing performance metrics for all recruits," Williams continued. "Your scores in several areas have been quite impressive, particularly considering your initial physical assessments." The captain pulled out a folder containing Sarah's training records. Charts and graphs showed her improvement across various metrics: completion times, technique scores, physical fitness measurements, and academic performance. "Your obstacle course times have improved by 30% over 3 weeks, Williams noted. "That's exceptional progress. More importantly, your approach to problem solving shows tactical thinking that we look for in future leaders." Sarah felt a surge of pride mixed with disbelief. After years of being underestimated and overlooked, hearing such positive feedback from a respected military officer felt almost surreal. "There's a special training program for recruits who show leadership potential," Williams explained. "It's called the Advanced Tactical Development Track, or ATDT. Selection is highly competitive, and only about 10% of each class qualifies." The program sounded like an incredible opportunity, but Sarah knew there had to be challenges involved. What would it involve? She asked. Additional training sessions, more complex scenarios, leadership rotations, and accelerated progression through advanced obstacles, Williams replied. "It's demanding, but graduates often receive preferred assignments and faster promotion opportunities." The offer represented everything Sarah had hoped for when she decided to pursue military service. Advanced training, leadership experience, and career acceleration could provide the stability and respect she sought for herself and her family. "However," Williams continued, "I need to be honest with you about the challenges you'll face. The program has historically been dominated by recruits from traditional military backgrounds. You would be entering an environment where some people might question whether you belong." Sarah almost smiled at the familiarity of the situation. Entering environments where people questioned her belonging was practically her specialty. "I'm used to proving myself," Sarah said simply. Williams nodded approvingly. "I thought you might say that. The program begins Monday. You'll be working with our most challenging obstacles and some of our most demanding instructors. Are you interested?" "Are you interested?" "Yes, ma'am," Sarah replied without hesitation. As she left Williams' office, Sarah felt a mixture of excitement and nervous energy. The Advanced Tactical Development Track represented validation of her capabilities, but it would also put her under more intense scrutiny than ever before. The news of her selection spread quickly through the dormitories. Reactions from fellow recruits revealed the complex social dynamics that had been developing over the past 3 weeks. David Chen was genuinely excited for her success. "This is amazing. You totally deserve it after how hard you've been working." Tommy Wen offered quiet congratulations and practical advice. "My older brother went through something similar in Navy training. He said the key was staying focused on improvement rather than competition with others." Jennifer Walsh seemed conflicted. As Sarah's roommate, she had witnessed the daily effort and dedication that had led to this opportunity. But she also appeared somewhat envious of recognition that had not come her way. "Congratulations," Jennifer said, though her tone was more formal than enthusiastic. "I hope it works out for you." The reaction from Jake Harrison and his group was more overtly negative. They made no effort to hide their displeasure at Sarah's selection for advanced training. "Diversity quota strikes again," Jake muttered to Marcus Thompson, though loud enough for Sarah to overhear. "They need their token success story." Marcus seemed less certain about dismissing Sarah's achievements. He had observed her performance closely and recognized that her improvement was genuine. I don't know, man. She's actually gotten pretty good at some of those obstacles. Give me a break, Jake replied. Put her up against real competition and she'll fold like paper. The comments stung, but Sarah had learned to channel negative feedback into motivation rather than discouragement. If Jake thought she would fold under pressure, she would prove him spectacularly wrong. Monday morning brought Sarah's introduction to the Advanced Tactical Development track. The program met separately from regular recruit training, in a specialized facility that housed the Academy's most challenging obstacles and simulation equipment. The group consisted of 12 recruits selected from the entire incoming class. Sarah recognized most of them as individuals who had stood out during regular training. Natural athletes, academic standouts, and people with obvious leadership potential. She was one of only 2 women in the group, along with Rebecca Martinez, no relation despite the shared surname, a former college volleyball captain from Arizona, whose father was a retired Army colonel. The gender imbalance wasn't surprising, but it added another layer of pressure to perform well. Their instructor was Master Sergeant Patricia Stone, a decorated veteran with 22 years of military experience. Stone had served in multiple combat zones and was known throughout Fort Bradley as someone who demanded excellence and accepted no excuses. Congratulations on your selection for ATDT, Stone began, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had earned respect through performance rather than rank alone. You're here because you've demonstrated potential, but potential means nothing without execution. She gestured toward a complex obstacle course that made the regular training facilities look elementary. The structures were higher, the distances longer, the technical requirements more demanding. This is where we separate future leaders from future followers, Stone continued. Every exercise you complete here will be evaluated not just for speed and accuracy, but for tactical thinking, team leadership, and performance under stress. The first challenge was a modified version of the rope traverse that Sarah had mastered during basic training. However, this version included moving targets that recruits had to hit with training ammunition while crossing the gap. The exercise tested multitasking ability and performance under pressure. Sarah watched as other recruits attempted the challenge. Most struggled with the coordination required to maintain proper rope technique while aiming and firing at targets. The natural athletes relied on their physical abilities but showed poor tactical thinking. The academic standouts understood the theory but struggled with execution. When her turn came, Sarah approached the challenge methodically. She had learned that rushing led to mistakes, while systematic execution led to success. Her movement across the rope was smooth and controlled, leaving her hands free for accurate target engagement. Her performance was solid if not spectacular. She hit 7 of 10 targets while maintaining good crossing time. More importantly, she demonstrated composure and tactical awareness that impressed Stone. Good approach, Martinez, Stone commented. You prioritized accuracy over speed, which shows tactical judgment. The positive feedback felt significant, coming from someone with Stone's reputation for demanding excellence. The second exercise involved team-based problem-solving under physical stress. Groups of 4 recruits had to navigate a complex obstacle while carrying a simulated wounded soldier, represented by a 150-pound dummy, and maintaining radio communication with base command. Sarah found herself grouped with Rebecca Martinez, a recruit named Carlos Santos from Texas, and Michael O'Brien from Massachusetts. The team dynamic was immediately challenging. Carlos and Michael both had strong personalities and clear ideas about how the exercise should be approached. We need someone to coordinate, Rebecca suggested. Otherwise, we'll just be running around without a plan. Carlos immediately assumed the leadership role. I'll take point and call the shots. Sarah, you handle the radio since you're smallest. Rebecca and Michael will alternate carrying the dummy. Sarah noticed that Carlos's plan automatically assigned her the least physically demanding role, despite having no information about her radio communication skills or her ability to manage the carrying requirement. Actually, Sarah said diplomatically, I think we should assess everyone's strengths before assigning roles. This exercise probably changes demands as we progress. Her suggestion was tactful but clear. She wanted to be evaluated based on capability rather than assumptions about limitations. Michael supported her point. She's right. We don't know what we're facing until we get into it. The exercise proved to be a complex series of obstacles that required constant adaptation and role switching. The dummy had to be transported across rope bridges, through tunnel sections, and over climbing walls. Each obstacle demanded different skills and team configurations. Sarah's size became an advantage in several sections. She could navigate through confined spaces while maintaining radio contact, allowing the larger team members to focus on physically demanding carrying tasks. Her climbing skills helped her establish rope systems that made dummy transport easier for everyone. Most importantly, she demonstrated tactical thinking that improved team performance. When Carlos became fixated on speed, Sarah suggested route modifications that reduced total time while minimizing risk. When Michael struggled with radio protocols under stress, she provided coaching that improved his communication effectiveness. Time, Stone called as their team crossed the final checkpoint. 14 minutes, 37 seconds with full mission completion. That's the second best time today. The performance was satisfying for the entire team, but Sarah felt particular pride in contributing significantly to their success, despite being assigned the seemingly least important role. The afternoon session focused on individual leadership evaluation. Each recruit was given command of a simulated patrol mission, with 3 other participants playing squad members. The exercise tested decision-making ability, communication skills, and performance under pressure. When Sarah's turn came to lead, she found herself commanding Carlos, Michael, and a recruit named David Kim, who had been selected for ATDT based on exceptional academic performance. The mission involved navigating to an observation point, gathering intelligence, and returning safely while avoiding simulated enemy patrols. Sarah's approach reflected lessons learned from her challenging childhood. She gathered input from all team members before making decisions, assigned roles based on individual strengths rather than assumptions, and maintained flexibility as situations changed. Carlos, you've got the best navigation skills, so I want you plotting our route, she directed. Michael, your conditioning is excellent, so you'll take point and set our pace. David, you're monitoring communications and watching for tactical changes. Her leadership style was collaborative but decisive. She made it clear that input was welcome, but final decisions were hers to make. When the team encountered unexpected obstacles, she adapted quickly while maintaining mission focus. The exercise concluded successfully, with Sarah's team completing all objectives within the time limit, while avoiding detection by opposing forces. More significantly, her squad members seemed genuinely impressed with her leadership approach. You're actually pretty good at this, Carlos admitted as they returned to the briefing area. I wasn't sure what to expect. Stone's evaluation was even more positive. Martinez demonstrated tactical leadership that prioritized mission success over personal recognition. Her team members responded well to her command style, and she adapted effectively to changing conditions. The feedback represented another milestone in Sarah's transformation from doubted recruit to recognized capability. But success in ATDT also brought new challenges, as other participants began to view her as serious competition rather than an unlikely inclusion. The program's intensity increased significantly in the following days. Training sessions included complex scenarios that combined physical challenges with tactical decision-making, academic assignments that required mastery of military theory and history, and leadership rotations that tested every aspect of command capability. Sarah found herself thriving in the demanding environment. The multitasking required by ATDT training played to her strengths. She had spent years managing multiple responsibilities while maintaining high performance standards. The pressure to excel felt familiar rather than overwhelming. Her obstacle course times continued to improve as she gained access to more advanced equipment and specialized coaching. Stone provided detailed feedback on technique refinements that could shave precious seconds from completion times. Your rope work is excellent, Stone noted during a one-on-one coaching session, but you're losing time on transitions between obstacles. Military operations often depend on seamless integration of different skills. Sarah took the feedback seriously, spending extra time practicing smooth transitions and equipment changes. Her dedication was noticed by both instructors and fellow participants. The academic components of ATDT proved equally challenging. Military history, tactics, logistics, and leadership theory required extensive study and practical application. Sarah approached these subjects with the same intensity she brought to physical training. Her essay on unconventional warfare strategies earned particular recognition from Captain Williams, who noted her innovative analysis of historical case studies. Martinez has demonstrated ability to think outside conventional frameworks, Williams wrote in her evaluation. Her perspectives on asymmetric tactics show genuine strategic thinking. As the first month of ATD training concluded, Sarah realized that she had found her place at Fort Bradley. The doubt and skepticism that had initially surrounded her selection were being replaced by recognition and respect. She was no longer the recruit who looked out of place. She was becoming a standout performer who happened to look younger than her capabilities suggested. But the most significant test still lay ahead. Stone had announced that ATDT participants would soon face their ultimate challenge: individual timed runs on the Academy's legendary obstacle course, with the possibility of challenging the long-standing record that had become a symbol of ultimate achievement. Sarah's journey from overlooked outsider to serious contender was approaching its climactic moment, and she was more ready than anyone could have imagined. The announcement came on a Friday afternoon that would forever be etched in Sarah Martinez's memory. Master Sergeant Stone stood before the Advanced Tactical Development Track participants with an expression that mixed anticipation with stern seriousness. Behind her, charts and graphs displayed performance metrics that had been tracking each recruit's progress over the past 6 weeks. "Next Friday will mark the culmination of your ATDT training," Stone began, her voice carrying the weight of military tradition. "Each of you will attempt a full-timed run of the Fort Bradley obstacle course. This isn't just a graduation exercise. It's your opportunity to demonstrate everything you've learned and prove you belong among the Academy's elite graduates." Sarah felt her heart rate increase as Stone continued explaining the challenge. The obstacle course record of 4 minutes and 37 seconds, set by Tommy Morrison in 1998, had become legendary within military training circles. Hundreds of recruits had attempted to break it over the years, but the record remained untouched, despite advances in training techniques and physical conditioning. "The current class record for this year stands at 6 minutes and 12 seconds, Stone announced, achieved by recruit Harrison during regular training. For ATDT graduation, you must complete the course in under 6 minutes. Those who achieve times under 5 minutes will receive special recognition and preferred assignment opportunities." Jake Harrison's achievement had been celebrated throughout the Academy, reinforcing his status as the class's premier athletic talent. His time had seemed untouchable by other recruits, including several with impressive sports backgrounds and natural physical advantages. Sarah quickly calculated what a sub-5-minute run would require. Every obstacle would need to be executed with near-perfect technique and minimal transition time. There would be no margin for error, no opportunity to recover from mistakes or hesitation. "You have 1 week to prepare," Stone concluded. "Use this time wisely. Study the course, practice your techniques, and mentally prepare for the most challenging test of your military training." As the briefing concluded and other recruits dispersed to discuss strategy and express their anxiety, Sarah remained in her seat, staring at the course diagram that Stone had displayed. Her mind was already working through each obstacle, analyzing potential improvements and identifying critical transition points. David Chen approached her as she continued studying the course layout. "Pretty intense, right? A sub-5-minute run seems almost impossible." Sarah looked up from the diagram. Almost impossible isn't the same as impossible. Her quiet confidence surprised David, while other recruits were expressing doubt about achieving even the minimum 6-minute requirement. Sarah seemed to be seriously considering something much more ambitious. "You're not actually thinking about going after Morrison's record, are you?" David asked, lowering his voice. Sarah didn't answer immediately. The truth was, she had been thinking about that record since her first day at the Academy. Every training session, every technique refinement, every improvement in her conditioning had been building toward this moment. "I'm thinking about running the best race I can," she replied diplomatically. But internally, Sarah was doing much more than thinking about a good performance. She was planning an assault on a record that had stood for over 25 years, set by a recruit who had gone on to become a decorated Special Forces officer. The week leading up to the timed runs was unlike anything Sarah had experienced at the academy. The normal training routine was suspended to allow ATDT participants to focus on course preparation and recovery. For the first time since arriving at Fort Bradley, recruits had significant control over their daily schedules. Sarah used this freedom strategically. She began each morning with technical practice on individual obstacles, focusing on refinements that could shave critical seconds from her times. Her rope climbing technique became even more efficient, her wall transition smoother, her balance beam navigation more confident. She spent afternoons studying video footage of previous record attempts, analyzing successful techniques, and identifying common mistakes that cost valuable time. The Academy maintained extensive archives of training footage, including Morrison's legendary record-setting run from 1998. Watching Morrison's performance was both inspiring and intimidating. His run had been a masterpiece of power, technique, and tactical thinking. Every movement was purposeful, every transition seamless. He had attacked each obstacle with controlled aggression that never crossed into recklessness. But Sarah also noticed elements of Morrison's approach that might not suit her own capabilities. His technique relied heavily on upper body strength and explosive power, advantages she would never possess to the same degree. She would need to find alternative approaches that played to her unique strengths. Her evening sessions focused on mental preparation and visualization. Sarah had learned from her difficult childhood that mental toughness often mattered more than physical capability. She practiced running the entire course in her mind, rehearsing every obstacle and planning her response to potential problems. The mental preparation revealed interesting insights about her mindset. While other recruits seemed increasingly nervous as the test approached, Sarah felt a growing sense of calm confidence. The pressure felt familiar rather than overwhelming, similar to the high-stakes situations she had navigated throughout her challenging adolescence. Jennifer Walsh, her roommate, noticed the difference in Sarah's demeanor as the week progressed. "You seem really relaxed for someone about to face the biggest challenge of your military training," Jennifer observed. "I'm prepared," Sarah replied simply. "I've done everything I can do to get ready. Now it's just about executing." But preparation involved more than just physical and mental readiness. Sarah had also been studying the psychological aspects of performance under pressure, reading about athletes and military personnel who had achieved extraordinary results in high-pressure situations. One concept particularly resonated with her: the idea that exceptional performance often came from treating extraordinary circumstances as ordinary challenges. Instead of being overwhelmed by the magnitude of the record attempt, she would approach it as simply another training run that happened to be timed. The social dynamics around the upcoming test added another layer of complexity to the challenge. Word of the timed runs had spread throughout the academy, creating intense interest in which recruits would excel and which might struggle. Jake Harrison had been receiving significant attention as the recruit most likely to set a new class record. His previous time of 6 minutes and 12 seconds had been achieved during regular training without specialized preparation. With focused effort and optimal conditions, many people believed he could approach Morrison's legendary mark. "Harrison's looking at maybe a 450 run," Marcus Thompson speculated during a dormitory conversation. "With his strength and athletic background, he's got to be the favorite." Other recruits were being discussed as potential standouts. Rebecca Martinez's volleyball background and proven leadership abilities made her a strong candidate for sub-5-minute performance. Carlos Santos had shown consistent improvement and tactical thinking that suggested he might surprise people. Sarah's name rarely came up in these discussions, despite her strong ATDT performance and obvious technical skills. Many recruits still viewed her as someone who had exceeded expectations but lacked the physical tools necessary for truly exceptional achievement. "Martinez is solid," she overheard David Kim saying, "but I don't see her challenging the really fast times. She's maxed out her potential." The comment revealed a persistent assumption that her improvements had reached their natural limits. People could accept that she belonged at the academy and might even excel in certain areas, but they struggled to imagine her achieving something truly extraordinary. Sarah found these expectations oddly liberating. With no pressure to achieve a specific result and minimal attention focused on her performance, She could approach the test with freedom to pursue her actual goals without external interference. Wednesday brought a final technical briefing from Stone, who reviewed course rules and safety protocols that would govern the timed runs. Each recruit would run individually, with full timing and video recording of their performance. Emergency medical personnel would be positioned throughout the course to respond immediately to any injuries. "You'll run in alphabetical order," Stone announced, beginning at 0800 hours on Friday. Each recruit will have one attempt, though we'll stop the clock if equipment malfunction or safety issues interfere with your performance. Sarah's surname placed her in the middle of the running order, which she considered ideal. Early runners faced the pressure of setting benchmarks for others to chase, while late runners dealt with accumulated pressure as other results became known. Running in the middle would allow her to focus purely on her own performance. Thursday evening brought a final preparation session that was more psychological than physical. Stone gathered the ATDT participants for what she called a warrior's meditation, a mental conditioning exercise used by special forces units before critical missions. "Tomorrow, you'll face a challenge that will test everything you've learned about yourselves," Stone said as the group sat in reflective silence. "Physical capability, mental toughness, tactical thinking, and warrior spirit will all be evaluated in less than 10 minutes of performance." She paused, allowing the weight of her words to settle over the assembled recruits. "But remember that this test doesn't define your worth as soldiers or as human beings. It's simply one moment in time when you'll demonstrate your current capabilities. Regardless of what happens tomorrow, you've already proven you belong among the Academy's most promising future leaders." Stone's words were intended to reduce pressure and anxiety, but they also reminded everyone of what was at stake. Strong performance could lead to preferred assignments, advanced training opportunities, and accelerated career progression. Poor performance might not eliminate future prospects, but it could certainly limit immediate options. As the session concluded and recruits dispersed to their dormitories for final preparation, Sarah felt a unique combination of nervous excitement and quiet confidence. She had spent months preparing for this moment, developing skills and techniques that few people fully appreciated. Friday morning arrived with crisp autumn weather that provided perfect conditions for outdoor physical performance. Clear skies, moderate temperatures, and minimal wind created an environment where exceptional results were possible. Sarah woke before reveille, as had become her habit during stressful periods. She used the quiet morning hours for final mental preparation, visualizing her run one more time and reviewing the tactical decisions she had made about pacing and technique. Her breakfast was strategic, enough nutrition to fuel high-intensity performance, but not so much food that she would feel heavy or sluggish during the run. She had experimented with pre-performance nutrition during training and knew exactly what her body needed. The assembly area near the obstacle course was buzzing with nervous energy as ATDT participants gathered for final equipment checks and warm-up activities. Sarah noticed that different recruits were managing pre-performance anxiety in characteristic ways. Jake Harrison was engaged in intense physical warm-ups, using activity to channel nervous energy into productive preparation. Rebecca Martinez was reviewing course diagrams and discussing strategy with other recruits. Carlos Santos appeared to be practicing visualization techniques similar to what Sarah had been doing. Stone appeared precisely at 0800 hours, clipboard in hand and stopwatch ready. Behind her, Captain Williams and Drill Sergeant Rodriguez had assembled to observe the runs. The presence of multiple senior instructors emphasized the importance of these evaluations. "Recruits, today you face the ultimate test of your Fort Bradley training," Stone announced. "Execute with honor, perform with excellence, and remember that this moment will be remembered long after you graduate." The first recruit was called to the starting line, and Sarah's epic challenge was about to begin. Everything she had worked for, everything she had dreamed of achieving, would be decided in the next few hours of individual performances that would determine her future at the Academy and beyond. The first few runners established the competitive landscape that would define the morning's extraordinary events. Carlos Santos opened with a solid 6 minutes and 8 seconds, barely meeting the graduation requirement, but demonstrating the consistent technique that had earned him ATDT selection. Rebecca Martinez followed with an impressive 5 minutes and 41 seconds, setting a strong benchmark for female performance. As each recruit completed their run, patterns began to emerge. The natural athletes were posting good times through raw power and conditioning, while the tactical thinkers were achieving similar results through superior technique and course management. But no one was approaching the sub-5-minute territory that would represent truly exceptional performance. Jake Harrison was scheduled to run 7th, and anticipation built as his turn approached. His previous academy record of 6 minutes and 12 seconds had been achieved during regular training without specialized preparation. With 6 weeks of ATDT conditioning and tactical refinement, expectations for his performance were extraordinarily high. Sarah watched from the observation area as Jake approached the starting line with characteristic confidence. His warm-up had been intense and focused, and his demeanor suggested someone ready to deliver a career-defining performance. "Harrison, you're cleared for your run," Stone announced, raising her stopwatch to starting position. Jake exploded from the line with aggressive intensity that immediately differentiated his attempt from previous runners. His wall climb was powerful and efficient. His rope traverse demonstrated impressive upper body strength, and his balance beam navigation showed improved technique developed through weeks of specialized training. The tire run revealed Jake's superior conditioning as he maintained pace that was visibly faster than other recruits had managed. His weighted carries showcased the raw strength that had made him dominant in previous physical challenges. The low crawl under barbed wire was completed with determined efficiency that reflected his competitive mentality. As Jake emerged from the final obstacles and sprinted toward the finish line, it was clear that he had delivered an exceptional performance. The assembled instructors and waiting recruits watched in respectful silence as Stone checked her stopwatch and recording equipment. Time: 4 minutes, 58 seconds, Stone announced. The result drew impressed murmurs from observers. Jake had not only set a new class record, but had also broken the 5-minute barrier that represented elite-level performance. His achievement would earn special recognition and preferred assignment opportunities. Jake's celebration was restrained but satisfied. He had delivered when it mattered most, confirming his status as the class's premier physical talent and positioning himself favorably for future military career advancement. As the running order continued, Jake's time stood as the clear benchmark for remaining participants. David Kim managed a respectable 6 minutes and 3 seconds, while Michael O'Brien struggled slightly to 6 minutes and 19 seconds. Each performance was recorded and evaluated, but none approached the standard Jake had established. Sarah Martinez was called to the line as the 11th runner of 12. The morning's results had created a clear competitive hierarchy, with Jake's sub-5-minute performance representing the pinnacle of achievement and other participants arranged below, based on their times and technique demonstrations. As Sarah approached the starting line, she noticed the subtle change in attention from observers. Previous runners had received polite encouragement and respectful observation. Her approach drew different reactions, some supportive, some curious, and some skeptical about what she might achieve. "You've got this, Sarah!" David Chen called out from the observation area. His encouragement was genuine and appreciated. Jake Harrison stood among the completed runners, his expression mixing satisfaction from his own performance with curiosity about what Sarah might accomplish. Despite his previous dismissive comments, he had observed her improvement over recent weeks and recognized that she had developed into a genuinely skilled performer. Master Sergeant Stone approached Sarah with the same professional demeanor she had shown every previous runner. "Martinez, you ready for your run?" "Yes, ma'am," Sarah replied, her voice steady and confident. Stone's expression revealed nothing about her expectations, but Sarah caught a brief nod of encouragement as the sergeant returned to her timing position. The course stretched before Sarah like a familiar puzzle she had solved hundreds of times in her mind. Each obstacle represented a specific challenge with optimal solutions she had developed through weeks of analysis and practice. The rope climb, wall traverse, balance beams, tire field, weighted carries, low crawl, and final barriers were no longer intimidating unknowns but tactical problems with tested solutions. "Martinez, you're cleared for your run," Stone announced, stopwatch raised and ready. Sarah had planned her start carefully. Unlike Jake's explosive beginning, she would open with controlled intensity, designed to establish proper pacing for the complete course. Sprinting early would deplete energy reserves needed for later obstacles, while starting too conservatively would make record-breaking times impossible. She crossed the starting line with smooth acceleration that felt natural rather than forced. Her approach to the 12-foot wall reflected weeks of technique refinement, using leg strength to walk up the wall while her arms provided balance and control. The movement was fluid and efficient, wasting no energy on unnecessary actions. The rope traverse had been her strongest obstacle throughout training, and her performance lived up to expectations. Her smaller hands gripped the rope securely while her improved upper body strength maintained steady progress across the 30-foot gap. Her technique was textbook perfect, demonstrating the advantages of focusing on form over raw power. Observers began to take notice as Sarah moved through the early obstacles with obvious competence and impressive speed. Her transitions between challenges were seamless, reflecting hours of practice focused on minimizing time lost during equipment changes and position adjustments. The balance beam section showcased abilities that had surprised instructors from her first day at the academy. Sarah's childhood experience navigating urban obstacles had developed exceptional spatial awareness and confidence with challenging footing. She moved across varying beam heights and widths with the assurance of someone for whom such challenges were routine rather than exceptional. "She's moving really well," Rebecca Martinez commented quietly to another observer. The tire run tested Sarah's conditioning and technique adaptations she had developed to compensate for her shorter stride length. Instead of trying to match the longer steps of taller runners, she had perfected a quick-stepping rhythm that maintained momentum while minimizing energy expenditure. Her feet found optimal placement with practiced precision. As Sarah entered the weighted carry section, her performance began to draw more serious attention from observing instructors. Master Sergeant Stone was making extensive notes while Captain Williams and Drill Sergeant Rodriguez exchanged meaningful glances. The 40-pound sandbags represented Sarah's greatest physical challenge relative to her body weight, but her technique had been honed through weeks of focused practice. She had learned to use her core strength and efficient movement patterns to manage loads that initially seemed overwhelming. Her completion of the weighted carries was accomplished with determination that impressed even skeptical observers. While she couldn't match the raw power of larger recruits, her tactical approach and technical execution achieved similar results through superior efficiency. The low crawl under barbed wire had always been Sarah's strongest obstacle from a competitive standpoint. Her smaller profile and experience with confined spaces provided natural advantages that became more pronounced under timed conditions. She moved through the 50-yard section with snake-like smoothness that was both impressive and slightly mesmerizing to watch. As Sarah emerged from the crawl and approached the final sequence of barriers, calculations began among observers who were tracking her pace. Her time through individual obstacles was consistently strong, and her transitions had been exceptional. The accumulation of small advantages was producing a remarkably fast overall performance. The final barriers tested upper body strength and climbing technique under accumulated fatigue. Sarah's approach remained systematic and controlled, despite the physical demands of the preceding obstacles. Her movement was beginning to show signs of effort, but her technique remained sound and her determination unwavering. The last obstacle was a steep incline sprint to the finish line. This element typically separated competitors, as accumulated fatigue affected some runners more severely than others. Sarah had managed her energy carefully throughout the course, maintaining reserves for this critical final element. As she began the uphill sprint, Sarah's smaller stature actually became advantageous. With less body weight to carry up the incline, she maintained pace that matched or exceeded the final sprints of much larger competitors. The assembled observers watched with growing amazement as Sarah powered up the final hill with strong, consistent strides. Her technique remained controlled and her pace appeared sustainable, suggesting that her conditioning and tactical preparation had been exceptional. She crossed the finish line with obvious effort but without the complete exhaustion that had characterized some previous runners. Her strategic pacing had allowed her to maintain technique and strength throughout the entire course. Master Sergeant Stone checked her stopwatch with an expression that mixed professional composure with obvious surprise. She consulted her backup timing device and the electronic recording system to confirm her readings before making any announcement. The silence from observers was complete as they waited for the official time. Sarah stood with hands on her hips, catching her breath but already processing her performance through the mental checklist she had developed for post-run analysis. Time: 4 minutes, 36 seconds, Stone announced, her voice carrying a slight note of amazement despite her professional demeanor. The result triggered a moment of stunned silence before the full significance became clear. Sarah had not simply achieved a good time or even an exceptional performance. She had broken Tommy Morrison's legendary record by a single second, accomplishing something that hundreds of recruits had attempted unsuccessfully over 25 years. The reaction was immediate and dramatic. David Chen let out a whoop of celebration while other supportive recruits began applauding. Even Jake Harrison, despite being displaced as the class's top performer, showed genuine respect for an achievement that transcended normal competitive dynamics. Captain Williams and Drill Sergeant Rodriguez approached Stone to verify the timing and review the electronic records. The significance of a new Academy record required confirmation through multiple sources and official documentation. "Confirmed," Williams announced. New Fort Bradley obstacle course record, 4 minutes, 36 seconds, achieved by recruit Sarah Martinez. The announcement triggered broader celebration from observers who recognized they had witnessed military academy history. Sarah's transformation from doubted outsider to record-breaking champion represented something beyond normal training success. It was a validation of unconventional paths and hidden potential. Stone approached Sarah with an expression that mixed professional pride with personal satisfaction. As the instructor responsible for ATD training, she had played a crucial role in developing the capabilities that led to this historic achievement. "Outstanding performance, Martinez," Stone said, offering her hand in congratulation. "You've just accomplished something remarkable." Sarah accepted the congratulations with quiet satisfaction rather than dramatic celebration. Her achievement felt significant but also natural, the logical result of systematic preparation and unwavering determination. "Thank you, ma'am," Sarah replied. "The training you provided made this possible." The acknowledgement was genuine. While Sarah had brought unique qualities and determination to her academy experience, the specialized instruction and development opportunities had been crucial to reaching her full potential. As news of the record spread throughout the academy, reactions revealed the complex social dynamics that Sarah had navigated throughout her training. Recruits who had dismissed her based on initial impressions were forced to reconsider their assumptions about capability and potential. Jennifer Walsh approached her roommate with a mixture of admiration and apology. "I owe you an apology," she said sincerely. "I underestimated you from the beginning, and that wasn't fair." The conversation reflected broader changes in how Sarah was perceived by her peers. Her record-breaking performance had shattered stereotypes and forced people to acknowledge that their initial judgments had been incomplete and sometimes prejudiced. Jake Harrison's reaction was particularly significant. As someone who had been openly skeptical about Sarah's capabilities, his response to being displaced as the class's top performer would indicate his character and maturity. "Incredible run," Jake said, approaching Sarah after the official celebration had concluded. "I have to admit, I didn't think you had that in you. I was wrong, and I respect what you accomplished today." His acknowledgement was gracious and mature, suggesting that the competitive intensity that had driven his own success could coexist with respect for others' achievements. The final runner completed the morning's events with a solid but unremarkable performance that was overshadowed by Sarah's historic achievement. As ATDT participants gathered for their official graduation from the specialized training program, the dynamic had fundamentally changed. Sarah Martinez, the recruit who had arrived at Fort Bradley looking like she belonged in high school rather than military training, had become the Academy's newest legend. Her name would be added to the record boards that honored exceptional achievements, and her story would be told to future classes as an example of what determination and proper training could accomplish. But perhaps more importantly, she had proven that appearances could be profoundly deceiving, that unconventional backgrounds could produce exceptional results, and that the most unlikely champions sometimes achieved the most memorable victories. As the sun set on what would be remembered as one of the most remarkable days in Fort Bradley's distinguished history, Sarah looked forward to the advanced training and leadership opportunities her achievement had earned. The girl who had been doubted because of her age and appearance had become a record-breaking officer candidate whose future in military service looked extraordinarily promising. Her journey from underestimated outsider to academy champion was complete, but her story as a military leader was just beginning.